I think it still has the same foundation. It still has the same vibe to us as it did when we had it, but I think it's become clearer to us what that means in a sense. We immediately reacted positive, like it really fitted with our personal relation to the whole idea of being a band. So on the level of being really, one thing is you're really interested and have a passion for music in general, other music too, but especially, of course, your own band. And that is something we wanted to put our entire energy and lives into. But also this feeling of this is something you need to do, that it's not entirely, it's not a choice of convenience, it's not something you do only to have fun and hope to be rich and famous, which is the classic rock cliche of wanting all the ladies and all the money and stuff like that. But it's something bigger than that, both in terms of becoming better artists and also sort of it's very important, I think, for humans to have this art as a vehicle of expression, sort of to resonate within an existence that can be sometimes hard to find meaningful and so on. So I guess it's become clearer and clearer that is sort of, it is being sort of enslaved by this urge to perform and create. Let's begin with like the starting point, the inspiration for going there in a sense. We've had a string of albums that have been quite thematical and exploring myths that are very strong and prominent in Norse mythology. Date from Axioma, especially, I guess, Axioma Ethica Odini, dealing with the writings of Odin and so on. Rite, dealing with various ritualistic traditions around the world and how they interconnect and how they sort of constitute the narrative of the human psyche. In times, exploring, time. And having some very concrete parts of Norse mythology, but also a grounding and a sort of recap of what it is, this entire project that Enslaved is working on. And then there was sort of a magnetism that I felt towards the unknown now, that we needed to also go into the shadows, out of the known realm of the gods, so to speak. And that's when Utgard sort of stared us in the face from the outside. Utgard itself being the name of the stronghold, sort of the chaotic forces outside Asgard. I think a very potent metaphor for the human conscious, or even more specific, the human unconscious. And that is what the album is, sort of a travel into this, out of the known and into the unknown. This is the artist Truls Espedal's interpretation of our concept. As always, we have our methodics where me and Geert would talk with Truls for an extent. We would concentrate it instead of little emails and SMSs back and forth. We will set aside a full day, meet in the morning. Truls will travel to meet us in Bergen, and then spend the entire day just going for walks or go out to eat, have some coffee, whatever, and just the topic of the day is this: what is behind the album? What are our thoughts? And typically have a session in the studio where you'll hear like the first parts of the album. If stuff isn't finished, we'll work with demos and so on. And then he will give us an indication of what he wants to include on the album, some very rough sketches. And that's the only, only point that we have approve or disapprove. You know, if we feel that this concept is not connected to what we're doing, that hasn't happened at any time. So we'll say bye-bye, and he will go totally off chart for a couple of months. He works with oil painting, so it takes a long time. You know, he first has to build layer upon layer to create the backgrounds and so on. And we will not hear from him or see anything before it's entirely finished. Just one morning there will be an email and a professional photography of the finished painting. So it's quite nerve-wracking in one sense, but on the other hand, we really have this confidence that he can totally put it across into visual territory, what we're trying to do. I think it's very powerful translation this time of having the ravens, Odin's ravens, as a very central element. Their names are Hugin and Munin, which is Old Norse meaning thought and memory, which is also quite symbolic, I think. And these are the only two that have sort of a constant access to these lands, Utgard, which you see in the distance. Because they're sent there as sort of spies or scouts for Odin, because the gods they're not enter into these territories themselves. Sometimes they do, you know, secretively or in disguise, but these ravens, the thought and memory of Odin, travel, and they bring back news of what is brewing, so to speak, what is happening. And this is also, I think, again, a potent metaphor for the human mind, in the sense that you can use your thought and memory and sort of access parts of your mind that is not accessible otherwise. And it's a very healthy thing to do, to know what is brewing, so you're not surprised by your own sort of dark sides or shadow sides. Important keyword in this process, that through the exploration of Utgard, it was impossible to disregard the works of Carl Jung. His description of the shadow is pretty much word for word a description of Utgard, we would feel. With that point, that in itself isn't problematic, I think. The Christian, all these like monotheistic world, you know, one God systems, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism and so on, they have their mystical beginnings where they resemble, I would say, the natural religions or the pagan beliefs systems. The way the systems were built were a lot more individually based before they became these politicized machines of oppression. Through the works that I've done in Enslaved and also outside with, for instance, Einar from Vardruna, we worked with local history in Norway of pagan societies and so on. One thing that I find quite peculiar is the total absence of the discussions around slavery, for instance, in the pagan societies. It's quite absurd that you have these sort of idealized views. No particular spiritual school. No.
Okay.
It's more of a neither.
Okay.
Thing. You know, I see them more as belief systems, reality tunnels, but I definitely recognize the human need for the sacred,
yes,
and the spiritual, and sort of what is above, you know, the mud and the dust, or beneath, or whatever. I think that is important to recognize, at least. So for me, it's more I try to avoid absolutes.
Yes.
So yeah, I might be right, I might be wrong about something. It's not really about that, about arriving at that point. It's about the journey you have going there, and forcing your ears open as often as you can to other views on things. Yeah, I think it's quite a traditional sort of hard rock, heavy metal sort of songwriting process. I write music primarily on guitar, being a guitarist, a rhythm guitarist. and then I will demo when I feel that they have a song structure that is becoming a song. I will record that and distribute to the other guys, like the rough. You can say that from the guitar being sort of the center point of the composition, and sometimes keyboards, because I'm also a keyboardist, that's got quite a deep, high level of detail, right? And then I'll illustrate the other instruments pretty much on the demo. Like if that, sometimes I don't really have an idea for the bass, and I'll just leave that out. But there will be drums. I will try and primitively illustrate if I'm going, just to illustrate, is this a song where the drums are following the guitars in the tempo, or are we trying that sort of opposite each other, where the drums will go on a heavy beat while the guitars are more up tempo, like that. But then distribute to the other ones and trying to leave it open enough so that these other, they're better musicians than I am, so it would be ridiculous to be too much detailed in what I want them to do with the song. Then they will work out their parts. The singers will get together. We have 3 of them, so there's quite a wide spectrum who works on they will sort of demo on top of my demo. And I will get this back, and that will sort of inspire maybe some more additions from my side or ideas. And me and Håkon, who's the sort of quote-unquote real keyboard player in the band, me and him will work quite a lot in my studio on the keyboard parts. I will maybe show him a crude idea and say, like, is this possible to do sort of an arpeggio out of this, which I can't play, but I know you can. And then he'll work out that. Some stuff he'll just work out on his own and so on. So it's only it's a basic idea coming from the riff guy, which is me, and then all these various little committees will work out their parts, and then we get together when all the basic structures are there, and glue it all together, work in the rehearsal room, and then they're on into the studio. So it's very much a group effort, even though it sort of starts. We've moved from sort of a writing sort of one lyric each here and there, So it comes out, I'll have 4, he'll have 4 on the album. But we have kept on working closer and closer on the concepts themselves. So these days on the new album, it's more of we've written a lot of the songs, the lyrics together. I'll start, sometimes I'll just have the title because I have some notion of what's coming from the music, and he'll finish the lyric, or I'll write 4 lines, 8 lines, whatever, send it to him. He'll use some of it, all of it, whatever, use it as a beginning and end or a middle piece. Because I feel I've arrived, but for me it feels like it gets more expressive if the singer, like the main singer himself, has been the one that's finished the lyric in a sense, that has the editorial pen. So I think that's an interesting and quite it's a very fun part, that instead of growing the typical thing where we started working very closely together, and then typical rock story would be we end up in each our house at different parts of the countries, and then give each other the evil eye during concerts because we're so fed up. But it's actually the opposite. We're getting just closer in this working relationship. It is, and it has been hard times. I think I'm sort of out of the roughest waters. Where my kids are now at an age where they're a little bit more independent, and I have to say that it's impossible to be without. You have to have the kind of relationship with your better half, or in my case, my better 1/4, since I'm a big guy. And she's very understanding. My wife used to be, actually she was Enslaved's manager between 2004 and 15.
Okay.
Gradually stopped touring with us from when we had our first daughter and so on. She still works in the music industry. She works with classical music now, but she knows what it is about, so to speak. So we just had to be open and really sort of have these discussions. Grutle is partner with a woman that's been sailing a lot as a ship's officer and so on all around the world. So she also knows. So I guess you have this thing in common. As long as you have a relationship that's based on mutual respect, but then of course you have to have some kind of you have to have both the will to prioritize, in a sense. It's going to be. I come from a line of whalers. If we go back to my great granddad and granddad, they were both hunting whales back when there was enough whales to do that without causing too much damage. And Norway gave that up in the 70s, pretty much.
Okay.
And so my great grandfather, he would be away for a year.
Oh my God.
On expeditions to the South Pole and so on, hunting whales. So it's sort of maybe it's a little bit ingrained in the family. And it's always been like that. You've always had parts of the family that some people do that. Some are truck drivers, some are airplane pilots, and so on. And it's totally possible to make it work as long as you have your priorities right, I think. It's essential. I think free speech is essential. It's also a very blurry concept these days, because free speech is no longer just free speech. It's sort of with this whole idea of utilizing disinformation and so on as part of the ongoing debate about truth. It's going now in sort of into quantum physics territory, where I'm not entirely sure that we're always discussing free speech when we are discussing free speech. Are you allowed to say whatever you want? It should be, I think, the discussion room be moving more towards sort of free speech as part of what information is being used. The whole thing about the neo-pagan scene and all that stuff, where I guess some like the use of military uniforms and all that stuff is used as sort of a fetish and so on.
Yes.
Like where is the line? I think it's a good guiding line is I don't think art should be limited by you can say this or that, but I do think the way the world is today that there should be a limit to causing harm, using art as sort of a front to cause political sort of reactions that would cause actual harm to groups of people or individuals. Yes, but that it's very far from getting to the point where you're causing actual harm through the stirring and encouraging violence directly to the point where people are demonstrating and attacking concerts because they think they get a sense that these guys might be this or that. That's very wrong.